Welcome to New Tracks Workshop. My name is Jim Kello. I'm the creator and host for New Tracks, where mentors help modelers build. Thanks so much for coming. I hope you come back often and tell your friends about our show. These Saturday workshops are a new project for New Tracks. They've resulted from comments I've received from modelers about scratch building and Chris Blackmar's interest in producing and leading this effort. The segments are structured like the popular build-along segments on our Wednesday evening shows, except these Saturday shows are designed to show modelers how to scratch build a model. I personally believe that scratch building is one of the most creative parts of model railroading, and I think you'll agree if you try it. Here is your opportunity to work with some skilled modelers to learn how to do it. You will learn the steps, the skills, the techniques involved in scratch building a model in any scale you want. There are no kits to buy, only the needed scratch building supplies. The plans that will be used for the model, you can download on your computer at no cost. The show's moderator, Chris Blackmar, is a very talented and artistic modeler, and he and his guest will guide you through the complete scratch building process, one small step at a time. After all, that's what mentoring is all about. If you're a beginner, I hope you'll join in and experience the thrill of completing a scratch-built model and being able to stand back and say, I built that. If you're a more experienced or advanced modeler, I hope you'll join in and offer your advice and knowledge to less skilled modelers and even get some fresh ideas yourself. The live shows will, of course, be recorded on our YouTube channel, so you can refer to the information later if you need to. In addition, I hope you'll visit our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe. You'll need to confirm the email that you received to verify your address. And after that, you'll receive all of the notice of our future shows, as well as the login links to attend. If you would prefer to watch the series on YouTube, you can do that by going to our channel, New Tracks Modeling, ring the bell, and click all. Therefore, you'll get all of the notice for the start of all of our future shows on the channel. If you can spare a little time, I hope you'll consider joining our management team to help us plan and produce any of our future shows. Please contact me at Jim Kello at newtracksmodeling.com, and let's discuss your interest. So welcome to the New Tracks Workshop. I look forward to seeing your finished models and, of course, hearing any suggestions for future shows you may have. Now, here is Chris Blackmar to start your scratch building journey. Could you put me on the screen, Kim? Or
you're on there.
Actually, I'm here if Ken, I don't, or Will.
You're on the screen, Chris.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I'm still trying to get reset up. I apologize, everybody. I just had a major power hit.
Why don't you just take some time, Chris, and get set up and let me talk a little bit here.
Okay, go on ahead. Thank you.
Let me first say that we apologize for the slight late start today. If it could go wrong, it went wrong. Chris lost power from his house and didn't know how long that would be out. So he wasn't able to be here to start it. William had some issues trying to get it started, and Ken was able to work with William and get the show started. So we apologize, because if it could go wrong, we got it wrong. With that said, I'd like to introduce Father Ron Waters at this time, who is the provisional minister of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Order of Friars Minor. And Father Ron, if we ever need a little prayer here to try to help us get through the rest of this show, it sure be nice to have it right now.
Oh God, as we express our creativity by creating in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Father Ron, thank you so very much. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us and to offer us that prayer for each one of our shows. Thanks so much again.
Glad to do it.
Chris, I'll just talk a little bit if you want, and you get ready to start the show when you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
And just let me know when you just butt in, and I'll stop talking.
Okay.
Scratch building to me, that's what this hobby is all about. Frankly, I haven't bought a kit in I can't tell you how many years. I support the kit manufacturers. I think that they are the heart and soul of our hobby, and I hope that a lot of you do buy their kits and support them and ask them questions and want to participate in what they're trying to accomplish for us. In the future, I think a lot of the manufacturers are going to be doing 3D printing projects for us, or resin-based products for us, or a combination thereof. And a lot of the techniques that I learned when I was coming along in the hobby may not be that valuable in the future. It may be you have to be extremely computer literate because you're going to have to learn how to do the 3D CAD drawings in order to get the things printed or cut out or whatever you want to do to at least be able to get the basic parts for your model. Ken, William, if you could put me on the screen instead of Chris until Chris gets ready.
Yep, you're on there.
Okay, right now I see you. Anyway, from that being said, I do hope you support the manufacturers. They really, you can't imagine what it takes to produce a kit, and the time and the effort, and then the small amount of return that a lot of manufacturers in this hobby get is just astounding when you really get and talk to them and find out what it really takes. The time and effort it takes for those manufacturers to try to communicate with is unbelievable. So I can't say enough nice things about the manufacturers in the hobby, particularly the small and medium manufacturers, which are the people that I try to support to the best we possibly can.
Okay, Jim, I'm about ready. Anytime you're ready to wrap her up.
And so with that said, I will turn this over to Chris Blackmore so that he can talk about scratch building.
Woohoo! What a day! What a day! All right, everybody. Well, let's go on ahead and kick this show off a little bit different. Instead of going through and seeing what everybody else is doing, let's go on ahead and do a change up here. A couple of weeks ago on the Wednesday show, we had a thing about N scale modelers, and I was in communication with one of the N scale modelers out of the Slim Rail Club here, who has been just kind of dabbling in N scale, and he created a few things. But when I looked at the pictures that he sent to me, I was astounded with some of the basics that we have discussed in the past, and I wanted to go back and take a quick look at that. Dave Vollmer is the gentleman who has done this modeling, and I believe Dave is on with us today. So Dave can go on ahead and pop in on this. Dave has no idea what I'm going to say, and I'm going to pick his pictures apart and kind of go through them. So Will, if you can bring up the first picture here, we'll take a look at this and discuss it real quick here. And then Dave, I'll have you, you can either jump in anytime or whatever. Now, this is a N scale work that Dave has done. And Dave is a pretty well-known modeler. If we were to show some of the other pictures of some of his other modeling efforts, you would probably recognize a lot of them, or there's a good chance that you would recognize them. So this is kind of his newest creation in N scale. Now, the thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is going back to the first two shows, we were talking about making use of colors and vertical space and a couple of basic concepts that you always want to keep in mind. And Dave really kind of utilized a lot of those for his modeling efforts here. And I don't even know if he realized that he was using them or not. But if you look at this here, notice that on the base of it, he's got the black fascia, and then he's got the dark river at the bottom. And if you notice, he's got on the lower trestle coming around in kind of a C, a dark shadow, if you will, of rocks and other things that form that kind of inverted C going up. And that kind of pushes your eye up to the next level. And then he starts using the bright colors, which form a triangle here, the three bright colors of the rocks. And that kind of somewhat frames the town in the background. And so he has also utilized his backdrops here. The colors, if you'll notice, are the dark, and then he carries that dark C part coming in on the right into the backdrop there. And so that helps carry your eye on back around all of this. And so, you know, it's just a real good use of color and values of color to emphasize the vertical drama here that he is creating with these two trestles and everything. Dave, did you want to say anything about this particular photo?
Not really. So, I mean, well, I guess and I'm going to talk anyway, right? So it's a 2.5 by 5 foot model railroad. It's meant to be portable. There's two separate loops that don't connect. It's not my super proto layout because behind me right now is my HON3 Rio Grande Southern. But I had a lot of fun trying to fit as much in the vertical as I could, because I wanted this to be something I could take like to the local Tico show or something that was just meant to kind of scratch my, you know, my Wild West itch. So it's based on the Colorado Midland in 1905, but based only loosely. So the trestles are a modified version of actual engineering plans from the Colorado Midland. I narrowed the taper on the bents a little bit just to increase the drama. So this is kind of, and it's also sort of a little bit of an homage to some of the stuff that Malcolm Furlow was doing back in the 80s to try to take advantage of the sort of the vertical elements. So.
Okay, Will, let's go to the second picture here. Okay, now in this picture, if you will recall in the first, the second session, we were talking about the use of vertical walls and things to increase that vertical usage of the space that you have. And here I wanted to bring to your attention that he's used 3 different type of verticals here, starting from the right on that far back portal. He's got that kind of paneling, if you will, almost at the back for holding back the crib work for the portal. And then he's got the stonework coming for the middle one. And then the one on the left has got the wood cribbing. So he's used various different types of supports for the walls on his vertical spacing here. The other thing that I wanted to point out in this picture is notice the structures. The structures are all kind of a muted, almost kind of darker color, and he carried that through even with the roofs. And that coloring helps blend the scene together a little bit more. And then he tops it off with the overhead of the dark green fir trees or conifer trees in the background there coming over the top of the hill. So this again is making use of the bright colors juxtaposed to the dark colors to enhance that vertical separation. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. Dave, did you want to make any comments on this particular photo?
Well, so the mine itself, the main mine structure that you see there, that's a model of some years ago, a gentleman in our club, John Campbell, scratch built one in O scale. He scratch built this mine, and Bantam Model Works actually based a kit off of this. But John was kind enough to send me I think he sent me the plans in HO scale. So I just scratch built it in N from styrene. So that's actually styrene. And then the roof material is that paper embossed corrugated metal material from Wild West scale models. I just spray bomb it out in the garage with different primers and then wash it down really well with a black alcohol-based India ink wash, and good to go. And then move on to the next thing.
Okay, and is that the Rattlesnake Mine?
That is in fact the Rattlesnake Mine. I can give you a better picture of that at some point. That's got more of a broad side, so you can see the ore house and the loading tipple and all that.
Yeah, the reason I was bringing that up is the Rattlesnake Mine was published in the plans and everything are in a narrow gauge gazette. I don't have the issue off the top of my head.
If you really want to know, I think I have it in the other room, but
that's okay. We can get it later on. Yep. Okay, next picture, please. Okay, now this one is real interesting to me. Again, here you will notice that he has got this drama of the lower portal. When your eye is almost drawn immediately to that lower portal. And if you stop and really kind of analyze this picture, you'll understand why, and why you're just sitting there with your tongue hanging out, waiting for something to pop out of that portal. And if it doesn't pop out, then your mind automatically puts something there running for you. But he has gone through, and on the bottom of the picture, just on the bottom part of the road, he has gone to a dark ballast. On the other side of the road, it's a light ballast. And notice the rock wall. This is where he is transitioning from the light to the dark. And where it's really a heavy transition, he's hidden it behind the tank here, the roof. And if you'll notice, he's got that triangle thing going, the golden triangle. He's got the gray of the roof of the tank, the gray structure on the left, and then the two portal structures on the right. And all of that creates a focus point to that lower portal. And then, of course, it is further enhanced by the dramatic rock carving, if you will. They're just overhanging the portal on the top. They're looking like something's about ready to drop down. But all of that's what pulls your eye into that portal immediately. The other thing that he's done here, and we don't see it, but if you were looking at the diorama, he's using the horse and carriage here in the lower right to point to something further down in the layout. But again, I wanted to point out how he's using darks juxtaposed to light, and then he's using the light, very light areas again to emphasize the vertical definition of the diorama here. Dave, did you want to say anything on this picture?
Well, I really appreciate all the credit you're giving me for composing these scenes. I mean, I just kind of went with what, my eye kind of suggested was good. But yeah, that stagecoach or whatever the heck that is with the horse is pointing toward the depot. So the depot is just off scene. Yeah, so there's sort of a lower level and then an upper level, and they only connect with one road on the far end of the layout. And I don't know if I shared a picture. I mean, if I've got a whole Facebook page for this layout project that puts all those pictures out there. But there's one road that winds its way from the bottom to the top, ducks underneath an underpass under the upper loop, and then comes into the town of Aspen at the top.
Okay. And then let's go to the last one, which is my most favorite picture, because he's just really utilized a lot of the things that we really touched on. And what I did is I presented all of these things just in kind of a collage of things to consider when you're modeling. And this is why we're going back and reviewing this real quick, because we're kind of at a good stage to stop and take a look and think about what we're doing with this structure and the scene and everything else. Now, again, here, he's used different materials to emphasize his vertical space and to help him hold it back. Notice here on the bottom, he's got the stones coming in from the left, and then it goes into that stone wall. Notice that just above that, he's got the dark ballast that comes across, and then that switches the demarcation line that he's using to make that transition from the dark to the light. Now, notice that you've got a triangle with the light colored stone, the light ballast, and then the light tan road in the middle of the scene there. The other thing that he's done, and this is just really classic, is he has literally used the golden triangle here, and he has framed his scene with the aspen trees. And I'll make you bet if we count them, we'll probably find that they're in odd numbers. But the aspen trees literally form that golden triangle, which frames his town. And so he has used the dark and light to pull your eye into the town. And then he has framed the scene with the dark and the light stones. And then the dark, of course, is the dark ballast and that little siding, which is all dark. The dark stone streaks going across the rock wall on the bottom. And again, the dark hilltop conifer trees and the dark photo drop area. And all of that, those three things together all force your eye into the town, which is that road is at a slant to give his vertical separation. So he's done a lot here to lead your eye into the scene, and then he further breaks it down even one more time using the red hues to break down the corner here and focus your eye kind of what's going on in the corner there just behind the tower, because he's got the red of the three or four structures, however you want to count them, right there, forming another smaller triangle. So he's used the golden triangle here across all of these different scenes. And that's something that you should always think about when you're putting your scenes together or your dioramas together or making your structures, considering your coloring of them. And that will help you compose your scenes for better viewing. Dave, did you have any comments on this one?
So when I originally designed the layout, I just kind of scribbled things out on a piece of paper. And I have to give a shout out to my friend who lives out in New Jersey, David K. Smith. Some of you guys have read some of his work too. He's been a pioneering end scaler, but he helped me really refine the layout. And as we refined, things like curve radii and switch numbers and so on, this is all a Pico Code 55 track. So I'm not much of a hand layer, and I wanted something that would be robust, but would look, like maybe 19th century or trackage. That vertical wall there in the front became a necessity in order to keep the upper loop with a manageable curve radius that I could still run 50-foot passenger cars on. Those tracks were almost on top of one another. And so while I oftentimes wouldn't use a stone wall that large if I were trying to do something more prototypical, because this was really just meant to be, sort of aesthetically pleasing and less of a, a really hardcore prototypical layout. I felt like, there's nothing wrong with using that stone wall. And then, and there's other places on the layout where I have vertical rock faces. I have more of the cribbing. I have more of that sort of that solid wood retaining wall. So I kind of tried to mix it up to keep it interesting. All typical construction methods from, say, the 1880s and 1890s.
Okay, well, it's wonderful work, but I also wanted to use it to display how you can utilize the concepts that we discussed at the beginning of this scratch building series. They just kind of all came together very nicely here, and that's why I wanted to use your pictures to kind of point this out to the viewers. And I appreciate your input and your willingness to share this information with us today.
Yeah, no worries. And if anybody's out there in Facebook land, you're welcome to follow either that project, the N-Scale Colorado Midland, or what's behind me, which is my HON3 Rio Grande Southern First District, which has probably more scratch built materials on it than the Midland does. But
okay,
Dave, I'm extremely impressed with your modeling. Chris had shared some of the photos that he showed with me earlier, and your modeling is just outstanding in my opinion.
Thanks.
If you could give me send me an email, I'd like to talk to you off the show. My email is Jim Kellow, Kellow.
I don't really have anything to write with at the moment. Sorry.
I'll send it to you.
I'll get it to Chris. Yeah.
If you'll send me an email, Dave, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of you guys might have seen for a long time I was working in N-Scale doing the Pennsylvania Railroad Middle Division. So as my shirt indicates, that's kind of where my roots are. So I did a little N-Scale on a door, Pennsy Middle Division type layout, and that ended up being in Great Model Railroads 2013 maybe 2012, 2013. I don't remember which issue, but so a lot of guys know me from the Pennsy world. But when I got here to Colorado with the Air Force, it's like, I can't really fight that narrow gauge bug anymore. So I kind of just did. I ended up selling the Pennsy layout to a friend of mine out in California. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave. And again, Dave is part of the Slim Rail Club out of Colorado Springs that I'm also quasi active in. And he shows at a lot of displays. That's a modular layout club. So thank you, Dave. All right, and then let's go on ahead and get into some meat and some modeling today. I'm going to put the computer up as I typically do. And then I'll be moving down to the other camera here, Will. Okay, my task over the past week was to go on ahead and build a quick door. And so that's one door that I built. Unfortunately, the camera does not pick up the door handle, which I built. But this door and the little slider that we've got on top is what we're going to construct today. So this is kind of what's going on. And I'll just go through and show you how I did it. If you will recall from last week, I had made a pretty significant error in cutting out my door. And I think it was Ralph Rizzetti who had suggested that I go on ahead and correct it using a additional piece of wood across the top, because the door, if you will recall, was cut too shallow or too small as far as the height went. And so we needed to add a little bit of something to fix it, because it needs to look about like set up about that high. And as you can see, it's just too short. So I'm going to first of all, utilize the trick that Ralph suggested. And before I start in on that, one other thing that came to mind from last week as we were getting off of the show, somebody posted on YouTube a question. And I think we got it addressed, but I wanted to go back if that person is on and ask him if they got the question answered or if they saw it there in the post show. And if not, they could re-ask the question if they remember it. Unfortunately, I forgot who it was in all of the excitement this morning. So I don't know. We do have somebody, Rich, is watching the YouTube. So if you have questions, comments, or whatever, feel free to type in there on the chat on the YouTube, and Rich will get the information to us. The thing that I'm going to do here is utilize a 4x4 scrap piece of wood. It's just a little piece of wood here that I'm going to chop up, and I'm going to use my typical glue bin. We've been through this 101 times, and some good old Eileen's tacky, and we're going to throw that together here. The other thing as I'm doing this is I can say that Father Ron built a door much like what I built, and as I'm gluing this piece of wood together, I'm going to have Will throw up that picture that Father Ron sent. And Father Ron's doing his all out of paper. And so I'll let him kind of talk briefly while I go on ahead and focus in on trying to edge glue this little piece together.
The door is that center piece there in the center of the picture. There were, I think I used about 4 layers of index card. 3 that were just the same width as one of the clapboards, and then a thicker or broader one to hold the door in. The door is in the upper right, the 2 doors are in the upper right-hand corner of that photograph. You can see them there. Again, what I did was I used a piece of clear plastic and mounted the individual boards on the plastic using that, what do you call it, canopy glue, and then mounted the frame on top of those boards. So it's a pretty rigid type of construction, and it slips right underneath that. I used a toothpick for the door stop right next to the window there, as a way to stop the door from sliding all the way out of the track. I'm sure that probably they would have constructed something at the end of the track at the top, but I put the door stop there as a way to block that.
Okay. Yeah, and if you notice, how did you do the rail there, the rail guide in paper? Did you use 2 pieces of paper there or cardboard, or how did you do that?
I used index card. It's about 3 layers of index card. It's the 12-inch, same as the clapboard siding. And then I used, I think it was like a 14 or 15-inch piece of index card cemented to the top of that stack. So the door fits snugly underneath it to move back and forth. Obviously, I'm going to make the door not movable, so you can see in. It'll be open, you can see in. That's why I was wanting one of those what do you call it, laser etched type of things that Heath is doing.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. So you can kind of see how that's done. On the one that I created here that I showed you earlier, I used 2 pieces of wood, and we'll go through that in just a moment. At this point, you can kind of see what I've done here. I've added that piece of 4x4 to the top, and that's going to allow me to get the additional height that I need here to kind of get this thing hidden here a little bit. And so I'm just going to go with that. And then the next step is to let you know that I have added 4 different layers of or applications of the Hunterline driftwood to this door. The last one being done almost a dry brush with a fan brush, which gives you some streaking. It doesn't come through and it's very subtle, but we'll enhance that a little bit more. So the next step is to go on ahead and get this door colored. So I'm going to grab my soft pastel. Again, this is a yellow white. It's a very, very light yellow. I think this one is a unison pastel. It's not a Terry Ludwig, and so it's a little bit on the softer side. And I'm just going to go through and do my typical pastel applications. And you can kind of see what I've got going there. And so, where am I? Come here. Ding, 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 ding. I know I'm there somewhere. Everything's backwards and I got to get used to it.
Chris,
So
I got one
kind of what I've
question
got
from
applied.
YouTube.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I'm sorry, what?
There's one question on YouTube.
Okay,
I think it was your last screen before this one. He wanted to know if is that a door guide on the bottom as well?
no. The door that we have coming across the bottom here, where's my pointer? Is you've got a 2x10 coming in right here, but I'm going to have some of that plastic curtain hanging down here, so you will not see in behind that. And then the deck or the dock, excuse me, will fit right up here underneath this. So we'll get everything mounted and have it flush with the bottom here. So the dock will come basically fit right across there. So that's
I'm sorry. He said his question was for Pastor Ron.
Oh, okay.
No, there's no door track on the bottom. That's the bottom of the wall.
Okay. And so the next thing here is I'm going to grab some clear alcohol and about a number 2 round. And again, this is a real cheap round because I'm working with pastels. I'm going to get her wet and then I'm going to dab it into a little bit of full strength Hunterline driftwood stain. And then I'm going to go through and unload my brush lightly. And then I'm just going to do a stippling here. And if you noticed, I didn't color it all the way at the top because I'm going to do some dragging of the pastel up. And that will color the top there. And then I'm going to try to drag a little bit of it down. I'm going to need to go for one more time. So I'm dipping my brush into the alcohol, clear alcohol, and then just lightly tapping and loading the brush with the hunter line driftwood, unloading the brush here a little bit. And then I'm gonna go on ahead and stipple this on a little bit. And this should give me my kind of beat up appearance. And then across the bottom of this thing, I'm gonna want more of a driftwood color. And so I'm gonna go grab some full strength driftwood on the brush. And here, I'm gonna turn it upside down, and I'm gonna use up by the ferrule to kind of apply it. And it's going, the stain's gonna lightly wick to a very limited amount up the door there because I had it upside down, and that'll make that a little bit darker across the bottom. Right now you can't see it because it's all wet, but as it dries, that subtle thing will come up. All right, and cleaning the brush, so you guys are all aware of that. So the next step is we're going to go on ahead and move into making the frame and the Z framing around this thing. So here I just used a, let's see, is this a square? That's the square wood. I don't want square wood. I want a piece of like 2x4. I know it's probably a little bit big, but hey. And so I'm going to put the pieces across the top and the bottom to begin with. And what I do is I just cut them a little bit big and then I'll trim them off. And so with that, while I'm doing this, I'm going to have Will split the screen. And Will, what time is it, by the way? Are we at the top of the hour, Will?
1:45. It's 1:45 Eastern.
Okay, okay. So we got about 15 more minutes then. And so I'm going to go on ahead and cut it. And if we can go through and have a couple of the guys kind of tell us what they're working on while I'm doing this, you guys can watch and let's find out what some of the other folks are working on. Also, if anybody has any questions about the build-alongs, if there's a question where you're at on a build-along that we can maybe address, feel free to ask that and we'll be happy to attempt to address it.
Chris, while you're talking about the build-alongs, last Wednesday, Jim Murphy and Dave Vaughn were on the Wednesday show talking about the wit and wisdom model of John Armstrong's Nighthawk Cafe. And I talked to Jim after that, and what Jim is going to do now is go back over some of the material that he talked about Wednesday. Because we ran so long on the show Wednesday, I'm not sure that a lot of modelers got all of the great detailed information that he was trying to communicate. So if you tune back in this Wednesday, then you'll be able to see a lot more detail in the first part of how Jim Murphy is building that kit. And I think you'll really enjoy it because this is one of the real outstanding kits in model railroading. John is in the Hall of Fame for O-scale modelers. His model railroad was always outstanding, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the show.
Okay, thank you, Jim. How about Bern? What are you working on? How's that soapstone going?
I'm not working on my soapstone building. I'm working on Sudham, or however you pronounce it, engine house. I just painted it today, and I'm working on the windows. And I'll have something to show you in a couple of days when I get my windows done.
Okay, okay. And Will, I'm going to throw you on the spot because Will's kind of done something a little bit different with his 3D printer. And so Will, if you'll take it away and show off your morning's work.
Sure, I can. I just need to find myself in this whole mess of people. Add to the spotlight. There you go, guys. Okay. Except I was working on it. Well, if you remember last week, I showed you my little thing with my sliding door. Well, the problem, got a sliding door here. That works. The tape is to hold it while I was working. What I've got is I managed to get the other window built. And now I've got a door on this side to deal with. Can't put a sliding door. So I wanted 2 double doors. And I thought, well, since I made this one functional, can I make a door here with hinges in HO scale? So today I got out the CAD program and made some hinges, and they're so darn small that piece of paper, some light, and if this thing doesn't fly off, you might actually be able to see it. That's the hinge. It's actually so this is inch by inch graph paper. It's not really focused, but you'll get the idea. It's actually 2 pieces, and the pivot point, there's a piece of 10 thou brass wire that runs down through to use as a hinge pin. And what I'm hoping to do is that it'll actually be functional. This is the first one that I did, and when I put a drop of CA on the brass wire to glue the hinge pin in, well, the CA ran through the whole thing and it doesn't work anymore. It's fixed. But I printed 10 of them, so we'll just keep trying and see how that goes. Trial and error.
Okay, thanks. And who else have we got on that we haven't heard from for a while? How about, I can't see the list here in front of me, so let's see here. Somebody, I think we had a telephone booth that went awry with some sort of aluminum paint.
Yeah, it's
And
me.
what's the
Turns out the paint.
on that one at this point?
Turns out the paint is not listed on the can. It's automotive paint, and it has a wax finish to it. That's why the glues were not sticking. So what I'm doing now, I'm scraping off all the paint anywhere there's a meeting surface, and that seemed to be working. I got a second one done. I'm starting a third one right now. The first one's in the garbage. But
Okay.
that's where we are.
All right. All right. And then what else did we have going on from last week? I don't know. Dave Vollmer, I don't know if he's still on or not. Dave, are you working on anything in particular if you're still on?
Yeah, I'm on. Let me turn I'm in my workshop now. I'm working on, oh gosh, how would I explain this? So some years ago, I had built a stamp mill in HO scale for the Rio Grande Southern big stamp mill at Rico, Colorado. And Banta Model Works offers this kit for it, but it's enormous and doesn't fit my space. So I kit bashed it using parts of a Grant Line East Terrible mill. It was one of the first structures that I kit bashed for my HON3 layout. And as my skill has gotten better and so on, I've kind of decided I'm not really as satisfied with it. So I'm in the process of basically giving it a complete overhaul. So I'm building board on board roof panels for the Orr house right now. So I mean, I guess it's scratch build. It's kit bashing, but I'm scratch building components for it. The other thing I just recently did for it was I can maybe show you this, the front wall of the loading shed. So this is just styrene with Grant Line windows, and it's more of that embossed paper corrugated siding from Wild West scale models. So
how are you painting that to get that rust effect? Because that's a nice rust effect.
Yeah, so fun thing on that. And this is what I use for all my rusty metal needs. And I can show you a couple more examples. I came across this, if you remember, Model Railroader Video Plus. Now it's trains.com and it's not as good, but David Popp had discovered something for rusted metal. And I think you can see the tram house at Ophir has that same rusted, chalky look. You know, when we're modeling, you guys probably have, already, hang on, shoot, there we go. You guys have probably already discovered at some point that dull coat, and there's another rusted structure right there, dull coat and alcohol make a haze reaction that we normally try to avoid, but it makes a really good chalky rust. So the technique is basically after you've painted it with, and I use, you know, everything from automotive primer to just oxide reds and browns and so on, just spray randomly before I apply the individual sheets. So you get some variation, but then afterward, I spray it all with dull coat. And then I take alcohol, I take like weathering chalks, rust-colored weathering chalks suspended in alcohol and brush it on and let that haze reaction do its magic.
Okay. All right. So when you say weathering chalks, are you using soft pastels or actually weathering powders?
Yes, I'm using both.
Okay.
I just, whatever color I need, I have a pretty extensive collection of just pastel chalks. One that's just in a palette of rust and grind colors. And then I have some actual, like, I think they're Doc O'Brien's weathering powders. So Monroe Models makes weathering powders suspended in alcohol, but, and nothing, not to take away anything from Monroe. They're a great company. I just made my own.
Okay.
So got a couple of empty jars down at, I don't know, Hobby Town or Hobby Lobby or Michael's, I forget. And then just filled them up with a little bit of isopropyl and then suspended the powders in it. And that's my rust wash.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Will, I'm going to show another tip here. And what you guys can see is that I've been going along. And so at this point, I've just got the top and the bottom, boards on. So I'm going to color the edges where those cut lines were. If you always go back and color your edges as you're cutting them, you'll find that you'll have a better looking model for some reason. So what I'm doing is I'm dipping my brush into clear alcohol, and then I'm going to dip it into the driftwood stain, unload my brush, and then up by the ferrule, about a quarter of or a fifth of the way underneath the metal part there, I'm going to just lightly touch and roll across that cut end, and it's going to wick in. But what I've done with that roll and stuff is I've controlled the wicking. Which way are we going? It's hard to see, but
Move to your left.
Yeah, it's like I just haven't got it down. But by doing that rolling technique where you're rolling the brush up by the ferrule and just lightly touching it as you're doing that, you've got a lot more control than if you go down to the tip and just dump everything in out of the tip of the brush. Up here by the ferrule gives you that control. So that allows you a little bit of wicking on the corner edges. Then what I'm going to do is I've got this one piece for the middle, which or for the edge here, and it goes up and down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is what I call lid staining. And I've got this thing cut to length. So I'm going to, since I don't want to pull the lid off of my driftwood stain here, I'm just going to tilt my medicine cup, and then towards where the very top of the edge of the stain is, I'm just going to barely touch it, and it's going to wick up, and then I'm just going to pull it off a little bit, and I'm going to flip it around and barely touch it, pull it off. And what that does is that gives you a weathering effect on the ends of your boards. And we'll go through and be chewing up that weathering effect a little bit more, excuse me, later on, take it to the next step. But as this dries, right now it's very pronounced, but as this dries, it's going to blend it in and give it more of a beat up weathered effect here. And then I'm just going to go on ahead and glue her into position. And let's go find a different victim to talk to and find out what they're up to. So we'll, unless somebody wants to speak up, go on ahead and kind of scare them and wake them up.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think last week I mentioned to you, this is Neil Harwick. I was working on an experimental thing with using strip wood for either tiles or
Okay.
for, yeah, so I'm going to show you, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Somebody's going to have to tell me sometime in the future how to go about showing something on there. So I'll just show it through the camera here on my
Okay.
computer. So this
To
is,
an-
let me see how,
Neil, if I can answer that question though, right up front here.
yeah,
Basically, it's just done through the share screen, but
okay.
we normally have kind of like a pre-show where a bunch of people are on about a half an hour before the show starts. And if
Uh-huh.
you have anything, and this goes for anybody, if there's something that you would like to potentially show and you have some questions about it, the process, we'll walk you through it, or we'll have you send us a photo or something and we can show it for you. So
Oh,
there
okay,
you go. Okay, Neil, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Sorry to interrupt there.
okay.
But go on ahead and show what you were going to show.
Oh,
me.
I didn't, okay. I don't know if it would work if I just held it up. Okay.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
Oh,
Go
there you
ahead
go.
and- Yeah, there you go.
So this is it could be considered concrete. It could be considered tile. It could be considered, what do you call it? It's kind of hard to describe. Can you see it clearly?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a model I took from a photograph I put together from a picture on Shorpy. It's called Best Domestic Pole. And the pieces on the side, if you look here, are made out of strip wood. Okay. It's not styrene. I'm having trouble deciding what to do for mortar because unfortunately I was kind of in a rush to build it, and I didn't leave enough space between the pieces of wood. And I painted over it and I did some weathering on it. So that's where I am at this point. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. These little ornamental pieces up here were hand carved. The sign was in black and white because a lot of Shorpy's work is black and white, and I colorized it. It's interesting. You would have to see the actual picture in Shorpy, but there's two parts of a door, two small doors opening on each side. But the real strange part of it was if you put the two doors together, it didn't cover the whole opening for the garage. So I made a folding door. And if I hold it this way, you see the other part of the door is hinged over here. I think I'm going to go ahead and finish the building. I really like it. I have some more details I want to put on it. So I'm pretty happy with it. And if I'm not happy at the end, I'm going to use it as a background picture, background diorama.
Well, I think it's really good modeling myself. I'm impressed that it's been the colors and everything that you've managed to come up with. It looks very phototypical from the what I would think of from that era. So I think it's
It's-
great, so.
Yeah, it's
thank you.
1938. That's when the picture was taken.
Okay,
It's
okay,
a repurposed building. If you can tell all of the different decorations on it. Probably in another 10, 15 years, or 25, 30 years would be a sushi joint. So I think this building went through a lot of changes over time.
okay. And let's see here, what else, who else is out there doing anything? Come on, guys, this is not Watch Chris. This is also to share what you're doing. I've got to wait a couple of moments for some glue to at least tack up here a little bit. Somebody else, come on. Yeah, it's like pulling teeth.
I'm working on that model railroad or trains magazine, Depot Dash Kit Bash. And this is what I put together so far.
That's a card stock?
No, this is plastic. It's a kit. And
Oh,
you're
okay.
supposed to bash it. I decided to put together a kind of lawn and garden center. It's going to be called Green, Greene, Thumb, Lawn and Garden. So
Okay,
there's got the two large openings for entrance and exit, and it's right now ready for paint.
wow, okay. What else have we got going on out there? Okay, what I'm doing here right now is I'm getting ready to add the Z bracing, and this kind of confuses some people. You can kind of see here what I've got set up so far. The top is all colored. The bottom has kind of got the paint kicked off of it, worn away, whatever. And I'll come back with some more driftwood and address that a little bit more. The other thing is that don't forget we're going to use some yellow ochre, which will also age this a little bit more. And I'll probably come back and hit it with a little bit of more soft pastel prior to stippling that yellow ochre stain on, which will enhance and weather that a little bit more. But I'm going to go on ahead and add this Z bracing here, and I'm going to kind of talk about it as I'm doing it. This is one of these things where there's 18 different ways to do it, and everybody's got ideas. And so, you know, if you've got some other ideas as I'm going through and cutting and stuff, please feel free to voice them, because I'd like to give the modelers out there 2 or 3 different options on this. The thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the piece of strip wood that I've got here. Again, this is 2x4, and I'm going to set it across with the top corner up against the bottom top edge up there. I'm going to use that funky blade and come in and cut that so that it follows the correct angle. I could go on ahead and measure it and all of that stuff, but or just use a 45. But since they're pretty much just one-off, so I'm gonna just do it. And the way I kind of do it is I'm gonna kind of score the wood, then pick it up, and then I'll come back and on the mat I'll cut it out. So how about some other techniques for folks on this? How do they do it? Can you see the angle here of this? You can see the angle that I got. Okay. All right. Got to be a different technique. Anybody else have some other techniques? Okay. So to kind
That's
of,
the way I would do it.
Okay. This is a place where I can put it down here on my little edge here and it'll kind of hold it, but it'll still slide this way or whatever if I'm pushing against it. So it'll allow me to push against it and get kind of a tight seal. I'm gonna get out a little bit of hunk of blue tack. And if you guys don't have this stuff, you've heard me sing its praises before. And so I've just got a little piece of blue tack here. And I'm gonna just throw it down and tack this puppy down. And then I'm gonna go on ahead and cut my piece here. And so now I can kind of push against the blue tack and hold my piece in place. Get it set up a little bit easier here. Does anybody else have some other techniques to making these type of angle cuts? So again, I'm going down from the top angle down so that the edge of the board is flush with the bottom corner inside there. And then on the vertical, I'm just going to score it again, and then I'll cut it.
I always keep a box of Band-Aids handy there, Chris.
Haven't had to use that today. Okay, so I'm going to test fit this thing and hopefully the cuts will work here. And if they do, yeah, it's reasonably tight. I'm going to call it good enough for government work. It snaps into place. So again, I'm going to do that, what I call lid staining. The reason I call it lid staining, and I'll show it to you once, is again, I'm using driftwood. I go in and normally with my stains, I'll shake them and then I just open up the lid and normally there's a little bit left. I'm going to take this off and do it this way. And so you've got a little bit left in the lid of stain there. And it's just the right amount of stain so that you don't overly flood your pieces, your end pieces. Just dip them in there and then kind of wipe them off. And it's a wonderful technique because with a brush, you're going to add too much stain. And with this, you don't add that much stain. Come here, where are you? Chink, chink, chink. And oh, rat poison. But you can see that I managed to get the edges. And yet there's, you can't really see it, but there's a little bit of wicking. Like this one here, it wicks up to about, right to about there. On the bottom one, it wicks up to about right there. So you really limit the wicking. The other way to control that is via that rolling and using the ferrule of the brush. But you still tend to get a little bit more wicking than because more fluid is deposited than doing it this way. And of course, trying to dunk it into this, I'm getting wicking about, almost a quarter to half of the way up the wood. So, so I've got my ends stained and this fits. So I'm going to go on ahead and glue this into place and then I'll cut the other two pieces.
It's
And
Chris, it's almost quarter after the hour. Do you want me to run that the S-scale resource video?
yes, please. Just for those folks that don't know, the O-scale folks are helping us out and representing us a little bit. And so the O-scale resource and S-scale resource magazines. So we're gonna do it's supposed to be the top of the hour quick video here. And if you'll hang on, I'll be right back. Thank you, Will.
Welcome to the world of scale, O and S railroading. We are your resource for all O and S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. Please check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-scale resource and the S-scale resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Will. I'm going to go on ahead and just add these other two pieces real quick. And again, I'm going to do the staining method and everything here. But then I want to get into a different technique than what we normally do. And that's for my rails and the guide rails for the actual roller assembly. Now this is going to be a permanently closed door. You know, it's not meant to be operational at all. And excuse me, I'm trying to concentrate and I'm not doing a very good job here. So what I'm going to do is for my rails up above here, I'm going to, here in just a moment, cut two pieces of board, and then I'm going to glue them together to make the L, and then I'll just glue that onto the back here and edge glue it basically. But the trick here is I'm going to seal this wood. Now, normally to make metal, I'm going to use styrene. I'll just be real upfront with you. I don't bother to work with wood and try to make wood look like metal. It's just not really that conducive to it. But a quick and down and dirty way to make wood look like metal is to seal the wood. And without getting into really, you know, like a sanding sealer and waiting for it to dry and all of that other stuff, there's another trick that some folks use, and that's what we'll be using here. And that trick is to use some good old CA. And this is taking, I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll come back and address this a little bit later on. So I'm going to move my blue tack aside. And here, remember, I tell you guys that I have that blue tack up on my piece, to this little bin up there to hold my paintbrushes to dry. When I get little pieces of blue tack, like what I was just working with, I just add it to that and call it good, and it just kind of grows a little bit. So what I'm going to do is real quick, like close up my driftwood stain. And I'll come back and add the other half of this Z a little bit later on. So just pretend at this point that we have both of the Z bracing done. So now we're going to focus in on this top rail. So Again, I'm just doing it down and dirty here. And remembering that this thing is sitting so that the tall structure is sitting right here at the end, the tall part of the structure. So the door is not going to really go that way. So I'm going to have the door go this way because it's just not going to fit over this way. I may have the slider come past a little bit, but we're going to be basically going to the other side over here. So I need to figure out the distance here, and I've got a 2x10, and I'm going to need 2 pieces of this. So if I kind of come down here and line it up a little bit, and
Hey, Chris,
yes.
on YouTube, Ralph Renziti says, why are you afraid to add extra stain? It adds character.
I'm gonna come back here when we get a little bit further along, and I'll be re-adding some other stains. This has just got some additional driftwood applied over the top and a little bit of ochre. And then I came back and added some chalks. But then I'm going to come back and add a little bit more driftwood stain and everything as we get the model put together. So there's another 2, probably 3 layers of stains that are yet to be added to this thing. So I've got to wait, quite frankly, to get the model actually into the shell stage before I start applying those final layers of weathering on the top. But yeah, I do anticipate adding a minimum of 3 more layers of stain. Does that answer his question? I don't know.
I believe so. He hasn't
Okay.
said anything else. Thank you.
Okay, okay. But it's a good and fair question there, Ralph. So, and also this piece of wood here that Ralph suggested from last week to go on ahead and add across the top here. You can see that that's been done. And when we get this 2x10 in here, that's going to hide that seam under. So that's why I wasn't worried about that. And so let's go on ahead and get this puppy cut. And I'm going to go past it a little bit. I don't know how much. That looks good to me. And I'm going to bring something about the same size over on the other side. Now, maybe I should go a little bit further on the other side. Let's take it out to about there. So I'm going to just kind of score that and cut it. And then I would normally get out a chopper, but seeing how this is all for the new modeler that has not obtained all of the fancy tools that we have, it's a one-off, so I'm not going to do a jig. I'm just going to use the other one as a template and make sure that I've got 2 of them the same width here, or length. Sorry for sticking my head down in front of everybody, but okay. So now I've got these 2 things cut to length, and they're both the same length. So here's the trick. Grab yourself a set of fine tweezers, preferably without the little grooves or whatever in the inside of the jaws here, so that they're just flat, and hang on to it. And I've got a thin CA, and I'm going to take my wood here, and I'm just going to put the CA on it and just flood it. So I've got the full thing flooded down. And what this is doing is kind of sealing the wood. I'm just running a toothpick over it. I'm gonna move it, and then I'm just gonna put this aside for a second. Grab my other piece of wood. And same process on this side. The other thing I can tell you as you're doing this, you'll get a bunch of the CA running down the bottom. If you just touch it to the paper towel, that will help get rid of it. And the excess, it wicks it off or pulls it off. That way you won't accidentally touch something and ACC it down. No. Dip my finger into some water there to kind of seal that. And I'm going to add it to the back side, the CA. So all I'm doing is sealing both sides of this wood with CA glue. And you'll know it's dry when you can pick up the pieces of wood and then go and touch your fingers together and they don't stick. How many of you guys have heard this or used this technique? Boy, it's awful quiet out there. Nobody has used this technique? I can't believe that with all the modelers that we've got online right now. If you happen to have grabbed a pair of tweezers that have grooved jaws, a quick and easy way to get rid of CA glue from inside of it is to take a match to it. Just hold it, the flame underneath of it, and that CA will burn right off. It's an easy, quick way to clean that stuff. And I'm going to give this just a couple of moments to kind of dry here. And while that's drying, let's talk about the paint that I'm using. I'm going to use, yes.
Yeah, to go back 2 or 3 minutes, I think I mentioned in the past when especially when I'm using balsam, because if you put paint on, it's going to get soaked in real quickly, and you're going to get a lot of texture of the wood. What I do is, I think I mentioned, you go to dollar store, you go into the cosmetics, and what I've been using over the years is it's clear nail polish for, that women put on their fingernails. And if you put a light layer on, it soaks in, and you really almost get a plastic texture over the top of the wood.
Yeah, that would work too, because that'd seal that wood and give you a real good even smooth finish. So that's actually probably a little bit better than what I'm doing here.
I think years ago, isn't that what they used to call dope?
Well, I always thought dope was kind of a sanding filler in a
Okay.
some sort of a varnish, I believe. I could be wrong. I mean, I've gone through more than 1 or 2 bottles of dope. It's probably why I can't put a sentence together when I'm doing this. So
yeah, it soaks right into the balsam.
yeah, the thing is that you would definitely want to give that wait for it to cure dry before you try to do any painting on it. So, and I don't know how long it takes that I think it's 30 minutes. So it's, excuse me, it's not like a long time.
Yeah, you put it on the drying rack.
Yeah, the problem with this technique, quite frankly, is you need to make sure you're in a fairly well ventilated area because it does tend to smell up the area a little bit. And if you're working real close to it, it's definitely an irritant. But this stuff is not sticking to the paper or anything at this point in time. And I'm gonna flip them over and just make sure. So that's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. Woohoo! Good there. Good there. All right. I'm not sticking my fingers together, so I think I'm good to paint. So my paint is just a water-based acrylic. This one happens to be from Reaper, and it's called Blackened Steel. It's just an old paint that I've got. Quite frankly, I used a little piece earlier when I had the paint out before. I went through and just painted the corner of a card because what I ended up doing was cutting that corner of the card out, and then that formed a base plate underneath my door handle here. I did do a couple of other things to the little piece of card that I cut out, and I'll show that here in just a few moments to take care of the edges and to further give me some additional options with that little tiny piece. But what I'm going to do is go on ahead and get out my handy dandy palette. You guys are all familiar with this. And I'm going to just throw a little bit of paint on here. Come on. You know it's in here. And when I say a little bit, all I need is a drop. And then I'm going to use just a soft round brush. And this one is actually, I'm going to use the, this is a number 2. This is the one that I was using that watercolor brush before. I've had it sitting in some alcohol. This is a real cheap watercolor. So as you guys know, I just rip them apart. And so dip it a couple of times into some water, get rid of some of that alcohol in there since it's water-based. And I'm going to unload the brush a little bit and touch some water over there. And we're good to go once I get this thing a little bit stirred up. And then I'm just going to grab my piece of wood and I'm going to paint it that color. And I'm just going to go through and paint the edges and everything real quick. And it's kind of thinned down, so it should layer fairly smooth. And it will give you a kind of a faux pas metal look for the finish. But styrene, quite frankly, would be the way to go. But seeing how we're working with wood, and this is for new modelers who don't want to go and invest in 18 different dozen types of materials, which I readily understand. We'll just go through that. Wasn't quite totally dry. I had a little bit of stickiness to that ACC on my fingers. And so we're just going through, and I'm going to put this aside to dry. And I'm going to paint the other one real quick. Oh, such fun having you guys watch me paint this stuff. Any other thoughts about paints and what to use as far as some paints for on wood, and maybe wood that's been prepped this way. You guys got some other thoughts out there? Any other brands of paint? I haven't
Yeah,
used the Vallejo's metals a whole lot.
Yeah, Chris, that's one of the reasons last week I was talking about the watercolor pencils, because you can get a lot of variations just once it's dried. You get a lot of variations from sanding parts of it. Because when you put paint on, it's always kind of thick.
Yeah, I totally agree. With that, the problem and the reason I'm not using a more translucent type of paint here is, number one, I wanted the acrylic to give me the plastic sealing, if you will, which will help mimic the metal. By thinning it down, it will actually smooth or flow smoother and level a little bit better. Again, giving me the properties of metal a little bit more. I don't tend to have any clumping, so that's leveling again, making it look like metal. And the big reason is, quite frankly, this is a metallic paint, and I'm not aware of a whole lot of watercolors that are in a metallics that I've had any success with. So,
one of the other reasons I use the watercolor is because with a piece of sandpaper, you can do all of the angle areas, all of the where where the pieces meet supposedly. So if you're making a box where there's a sharp edge, you can take sandpaper and rub it, because that's usually where the wearing goes the first, around the box, the corners. But I guess, you can also probably take a piece of sandpaper if the paint isn't too thick and do the same thing, I would imagine. I never tried it.
yeah, no, but you bring up some good thoughts there. So on that, so I would agree. And that's a different way of doing it. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because not everybody has metallic, acrylic metallics, and they don't want to go spend, the money for it. So yeah, that's another option. So yeah, great option. Okay. So this stuff is pretty quickly drying at this point. While it's continuing to dry, I'm going to go on ahead and lay out this for gluing and mounting. So as you'll recall, I put some bracing on the back side, and I'll use that to slide the edge up on the thing and kind of
Chris,
make it sit. Yeah.
time-wise, we're at 2:37.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Well, with that, I think what I'll do is go on ahead and start wrapping her up. What I'll do is come back next week and I'll show you real quick how to do the door handle, and using a little bit of paper and stuff. But because we went so long last week, I wanted to kind of keep this week's a little bit shorter for everybody. And again, express my sincere appreciation for everybody for hanging on to the marathon last week. One final time, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments on what we've kind of covered so far today? Dead silence. Okay. Well, I wanted to again thank Dave Vollmer for volunteering to allow us to pick apart his stuff. He had no idea what I was going to do, and I appreciate his participation today and look forward to maybe having him join us again in the future. And with that, I'm going to go on ahead and kind of wrap her up. If anybody wants to stay on for a few minutes to the post YouTube show, certainly feel free to do so. For those of you that have ordered the ice box or ice making machinery, I still haven't received it yet, and I'm doing some follow-up work. I'm not sure that Heath got my emails, and so we're running about a week behind what I anticipated on that one. So I was hoping Heath would be on today, but apparently he's not. So I'll hop on that on the backside. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us, YouTubers. Have a good time, and we will catch you next week. And